I ask you to indulge because, you know, we have a fantastic presentation at 1:30 and we do not want to miss it. Thank you. So, before I introduce this next speaker, I did not thank yet my dean's office. Patricia Conley, Diane Muniz, Raymond Schwank, Ayad Haboubi, and Justin, our graduate assistant, because they make my life so easy. They go, oh no, what is she doing to us now? Cindy Klink is the Senior Policy Advisor for Pennsylvania Senator John P. Blake. Born and raised in Carbondale, which is just north of here, correct? Cindy is the former president of the Carbondale Chamber of Commerce, as well as the former campaign manager for Senator Blake. She completed her education at another Catholic university? Don't marry what, I'm just teasing you. Resides at Crystal Lake and is the mother of 3 children. Cindy Klink, Senior Policy Advisor for Pennsylvania Senator John P. Blake, would you please come up and say a few words? I'm not Thank
you. Thank you all. First, on behalf of Senator Blake, I want to extend sincere thanks and congratulations to the University of Scranton and its new president, the Reverend Kevin Quinn, to Dr. Pellegrino and the Panuska College of Professional Studies, and of course to Edward and Patricia Leahy, the honorary chairs of the 10th Annual Conference on this Disability. Senator Blake regrets that his schedule would not permit him to be here today, but he was honored by the invitation to take part in this conference and extends his gratitude and best wishes to all who made this day possible. Also, Senator Blake wanted me to express deep appreciation to U.S. Senator Bob Casey, who has been such an important advocate for people with disabilities and who has been tireless in his dedication to the causes of this conference. Thank you, Senator Casey. Senator Blake began his career in public service in the Lackawanna County Redevelopment Authority in the early 1980s, at a time when voices were first starting to rise up in support for Americans with Disabilities Act. There were many local voices in that chorus. Keith Williams from the Northeast Pennsylvania Center for Independent Living, a wonderful advocate for persons with disability. Edie Ransom, Scranton Mayor David Wenzel, and Senator Blake's aunt, Emma Masler, the founder of VSP, Very Special People in Lackawanna County, and many countless others. These are the people we need to remember and to thank for the successful effort that resulted in the passage of ADA in 1990. In commemorating the 20th anniversary of the ADA in 2010, Keith Williams noted that it was the most sweeping piece of civil rights legislation for the people with disabilities ever passed. You notice more ramps at restaurants and stores. Lift-equipped buses are now commonplace. People who are deaf or hard of hearing have more access to sign language interpreters at work and at public functions. Curb cuts provide greater wheelchair access in our downtowns, and government buildings are more accessible than ever. But he also noted it's time to ask ourselves what else needs to be accomplished. Keith said the disability rights movement learned many lessons from the civil rights leaders that preceded them. And one important realization is that it's a long journey from legislation to true progress. That's why it's important to continue the dialogue enabled by this conference. We have a constant and moral obligation to advance, as the mission of this conference relates, full inclusion, dignity, opportunity, wellness, independence, and full participation in community life for persons with disabilities. We also have an obligation to ensure caregivers and family members are assisted, supported, and encouraged as they care for loved ones who are living with the challenges of disability. Again, as the mission of this conference aptly states, disability is part of the human experience, and the optimal quality for individuals and families requires multidisciplinary interventions, education, research, and leadership. On the matter of interventions, This is the most important public policy consideration that has been paramount in Senator Blake's 30-year career in public service, albeit including the 9 months in Pennsylvania State Senate. It is accessible and adaptable housing for persons with disability. Working with Keith Williams, Lackawanna County Board of Realtors, local banks, and other disability advocates, the Senator was instrumental in the establishment of Lackawanna County Community Housing Resource Board, which received HUD funding to advance fair housing and equal opportunity in housing in the 1990s. Later years as a senior executive at the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, he served on and helped steward activities of the Pennsylvania State Housing Advisory Committee. This statewide committee focused on housing needs and the allocation of federal and state funding to meet the needs throughout the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, the Pennsylvania Accessible Housing Program, a successful DCED program, in great demand throughout the state, was eliminated in the most recent budget cut. As the Senator serves on the Senate State Appropriations Committee, he will continue to advocate for a restoration of state fundings and for this and such programs. The most recent budget cycle in Pennsylvania evidenced not only a change in the philosophy and priorities relating to these essential programs and in services, in many cases an outright retreat from them. One need only look in the reduction in the Human Services Development Fund to our counties. Deep reductions in funding to the public education, deep reductions to higher education, cuts that serve to undermine opportunities for essential and life-changing research, adjustments in the methods and the amounts of reimbursement provided to group homes throughout the state, elimination of adult basic insurance programs, the elimination of the aforementioned Pennsylvania Accessible Housing Program. These are only a sample of the changes that we are seeing at the state level, and unfortunately the evidence as insistent on such austerity in government as to render significant adverse effects on vulnerable populations and shift away from essential supports that must be provided to caregivers and families serving loved ones with disabilities. Senator Blake believes we can do better, and indeed we must. As someone well-informed through his personal experience and his education on the urgent imperative, we have to assist persons with disabilities and their families. He will work to improve the state's commitment to them, and in doing so, ensure that we meet the responsibility we have to advance the mission of this conference. Thank you again to the University of Scranton, to all who are participating in today's presentations, and again, on behalf of the Senator, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this important discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cindy. If you noticed while you were out of the room, a beautiful 3-tiered birthday cake entered our luncheon affair. I would like to ask the co-chairs of this conference to come stand right by this birthday cake first. Dr. Lori Brooke, Dr. Rebecca Doggan, Valerie Clark, and if possible, if any other member of the committee for this conference would like to come up and join this birthday cake, we'd love to have you come up. Franny Mancuso, Ray Schwank, Justin, come up. Lori, would you take your present for me? Because I believe that you always have to have a birthday cake and presents. You know, I am a Pellegrino, my name ends in a 0. We party all the time in my house, all the time. So you're probably saying, Valerie, come up and join us. Could you please, and Diane and Patricia, they are so shy, but could you please give our wonderful co-chairs, Lori, Rebecca, Valerie, and the committee one big round of applause. 10 years. Oh my goodness. So, I need their help of these co-chairs again. Could Rebecca and Lori please come up, and Franny, and could you work this PowerPoint for me? And I'm wondering, there's some other member that's not up here yet. I believe his name is Dr. Ralph Passinelli. Has anybody seen him? Now, oh, there he is. Oh, Monsieur, please come up and join us. Come. Monsieur, Doctor. Entree. Oh, please just come up for 1 second. You know, every year, it's his birthday. And I said to him coming in today, I said, Ralph, I will not ever embarrass you, because that is just not in my nature. I don't do those things at all. And I said, but you see those gigantic balloons coming in? They were for our Dr. Passinelli. And then he said, oh, Deborah. He goes, I'm going to get killed, aren't I? I know. He said, it's the 10th anniversary. This is a huge celebration. I would like to read something to you, Dr. Passinelli. Dear Dr. Passinelli, we deeply appreciated you choosing the University of Scranton's Weinberg Memorial Library to be the home of your unique collection of vocational rehabilitation, VR materials from your exemplary career. Your attention to detail and organization of over 50 years of materials is most impressive and will be of tremendous assistance to our library staff and to many users of the Weinberg Library. Your collection is a treasure trove of original materials that provide a permanent history in the evolution of VR from the Mary Schweitzer era to the present. Your journal collection, legislative and programmatic documents, and books provide researchers and scholars with a permanent record of VR's history. We recognize your outstanding leadership throughout your career and continuing into your retirement. Your University of Scranton faculty colleagues note that you have walked with the great leaders and advocates in the field of rehabilitation and have worked side by side in partnerships that have shaped the state federal vocational rehabilitation program as we know it today. The faculty, staff, and students of the Rehabilitation Counseling Program in the Panuska College of Professional Studies and all of our professional studies programs are honored that your name and work will forever be a part of our history. Our plan is to provide a library webpage devoted to your collection that will connect your materials to the library's catalog and display and digitalize resources to be available to the larger rehabilitation community. Your collection will provide significant opportunities for future research in this very important field. Thank you for all of your contributions. Sincerely, Charles Kratz, Dean of the Library and Information Fluency, Weinberg Memorial Library, the University of Scranton. I can tell you as the Dean of the Panuska College of Professional Studies, I have never been more honored or impressed with an individual than you, Dr. Passinelli. 5 years ago, Dr. Lori Brooke sat me down in my office and said, Dean, I need to tell you about one of our biggest assets, my mentor. She gave me your first VR journal. I read every bit of every single thing you wrote. Thanks to Lori, because when Lori speaks, I listen. Thank you. Please, one round of applause. Of his collection of the journey where Lori and Rebecca made the journey down. And so could you start the slides? And as we're doing that, let's just sing happy birthday. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Russell. Up. Wow, that's a hard act to follow. As you can see, and Lori, if she would like to add a few words, but if you notice the journals, the VR journals, last year when we actually had the ADA celebration, notice that this goes back to 1973.
As some of the information is coming through, and as we've gone through the boxes that were so meticulously packed by Dr. and Mrs. Passinelli, our library staff was so appreciative of the attention to detail in the organization. Not only was the box labeled, but the lid to the box was labeled. A librarian's dream, they said. So there are 25 boxes that came there are 25 boxes that came to the University of Scranton at this time, and in these boxes are all of the journals, the early journals in rehabilitation up until recent years. And what we're going to do with those journals is make them part of the permanent collection. There are also a number of specific pieces of legislation, and particularly we can see the Rehab Act of 1973. There are several boxes that contain pieces of legislation, all in pristine condition. We are hopeful to be able to have all of these things cataloged and then look for some money to digitize these records so that they will be available globally to anyone who wants to do research. All of the Institute on Rehabilitation issues, the original records are there in order. And again, we want to start with digitizing these rehab issue books and add them to the collection. And now they are being digitized. And so what we want to do then is provide a permanent link to where we can find each year the records coming out, so that in one place someone who has an interest can come and find all of this, whether it's on our library site or whether it's linked to another library site. I think what tickled us most in the rehab counseling program is we found, Dr. Passinelli, the original rehabilitation counseling curriculum. It dates back to 1954 with the amendments, and Rebecca and I are hoping to be able, and if you want to join us, this would be fun, to be able at NCRE to provide a look at here's our past, here's our present, look where we've come, using this original document to kind of light our way. So we couldn't be more thrilled. This is just a little kind of touch of what's in this treasure that the University of Scranton is so pleased to have. So thank you, Dr. Passinelli. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one final note that the library has put together a sample of these items in a beautiful display on the front, the first floor of the library. If you walk right into the library, you'll see a beautiful display case with just a smattering of some of these wonderful items. So I hope that you'll all get a chance to do that. And the library is just the building right next door to the DeNaples Center. So on your way out this afternoon, if you'd like to stop by and look at that, it's really a beautiful display. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Whew. Now it's time. It's hard to keep topping and topping. Now it's time for the Leahy to come up, Mr. and Mrs. Leahy, to actually present our Edward R. Leahy Jr. Awards for Excellence. I would now please like Edward and Patricia to come up and make the announcements.
Ed Leahy and I want to thank you all again for being at this conference. It's an important conference, and we love having all of you here. It is my pleasure, and that of my husband, Ed Leahy, to present 3 awards today. The first of which is going to an individual whose name is synonymous with leadership. And that is the Commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, the Honorable Lene Rutledge. I'm going to words, if I may, and then we'll make the presentation. Lene Rutledge is one of the most impressive individuals that Ed and I have met. Ed knows of the commissioner. He met the commissioner today and is equally impressed.
Oh,
It
way
is.
back. We've met before.
Where was I? And was equally impressed with the caliber of this individual. She is a woman of enormous commitment and character, and is an individual who fights every day for the rights of all children and adults, all Americans with disabilities. She's a very strong leader. She's a very strong leader. And that's not always easy to do in Washington, because Washington, the federal bureaucracy, not my words, not yours, do not always allow a federal employee to say what he or she thinks. Lene Rutledge says what she thinks. She's forthright, she's direct, she'll be in your face, but never behind your back, because that's the kind of person Lene Rutledge is. It is our pleasure to honor one of the best commissioners of RSA that I know of and that many of you know of, and that is the Honorable Lene Rutledge. Please do. Please. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Thank you. Please.
Well, to both Ed and Patricia, I had no idea that this was going to happen today. It is my honor to serve as your commissioner, and it is equally my honor on your behalf to accept this lovely, lovely plaque. And it's glass, and it has the emblem of the University of Scranton, and it says, the Edward R. Leahy Jr. Award for Excellence. I'm sure that's supposed to be Edward and Patricia, but it does say Edward R. Leahy. It's the son. In executive, vocational, rehabilitation leadership, and public policy development. Awarded to the Honorable Lene Rutledge, Commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, October 5th, 2011. So on behalf of your son and your family, I appreciate this a great deal. Thank you so much, both Ed and Patricia. Thank you. Very cool. Thank you.
So are you. Our next award goes to a very old and good friend. She's not old, but I've known her for some time. I'm old. She's not. This is a person whom I first met in the Rehabilitation Services Administration when I had the absolute pleasure of working in RSA, and it was a pleasure. She is a person, she and I bonded absolutely immediately. She became one of my mentors in RSA, even though she's significantly younger than I. And she is a person who cares so much about the civil rights and the advocacy for all Americans with disabilities. Her family has been touched by disability, very personally touched by disability. And if you have not heard Kathleen West Evans's story about her family, you must hear the story. It's one of the most compelling that we have ever heard. And she presently serves as the founder and the director of the National Employment Team at CSAVR, Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation. And we are very happy to have you, Steve, and you, Rita, here with us as well. Thank you very much for being here. That's a first, and we like it very much. Kathy West Evans was courting employers before courting employers for individuals with disabilities was cool. No doubt about it. I know the state VR agencies do that, and they do it well. But there was never an office, there was never an entity that actually worked with the state VR agencies. The CRPs, yes, and we very much respect our CRPs, but there was never really an office. There was never really somebody at the helm. Now there is. She is the ultimate point of contact for all businesses, as far as I'm concerned, for all businesses throughout the country. Did you know she's always on a plane? This woman is always, I will email her, I will, call her, and when I don't get a response, I know she's on a plane. And so she will call, and of course, when she's home, she's in Washington State, of course, and it's a 3-hour time change, so it doesn't always work. But we always manage to find each other. As the parents and as parents of a child who had significant disabilities, we honor you. We honor your service. You are a qualified rehabilitation counselor, and nobody respects qualified rehabilitation counselors more than Ed and Patricia Leahy. It is my pleasure to introduce, and I'm not sure I'm introducing her to too many of you, the great Kathy West Evans. Kathy, your plaque says the Edward R. Leahy Jr. Award for Excellence in Rehabilitation Leadership and Employment Systems Design, October 5th, 2011. Congratulations. Oh, yes, the group.
That's okay. Maybe by the 11th year we'll get it right.
No, Terry, I'll get it right in the 11th. Please.
Patricia has this knack of catching me by surprise and always touching my heart. I'm very humbled by this because when I look out, I see my family. So you did it. This doesn't happen often.
I'm sorry.
This 10th year anniversary is also the anniversary of a day I got a call at RSA to the emergency room at Harborview. And my brother was lying in ICU, and they didn't know if he would live. For those of you who have been in this field and you've dedicated your life personally and professionally, you know in the moment why you're in this field. When you say, please God, let me have a chance to use my skills and my passion around rehab. My brother's medical label is quadriplegic and traumatic brain injury. But to me, he's my brother. And I see the very best in people when I see him. The doctor said he'll be living in a nursing home, and I'm married to a rehab counselor who happens to be deaf. And we looked and said, excuse me, God, but hell no. He lives on his own. He has custody of his daughter. He's raising his family. He's back in school. And it's because people like you were there with us. And I want you all to remember this profession touches lives in a professional way with our business partners and the great work we're doing, but in a personal way, with the way that we live every day when we see the talents of everyone. And the Leahys did this to me. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Third and last award, Edward R. Leahy Jr. Awards in Excellence. It goes to a person who unfortunately cannot be with us today, but his family is here. And as I think some of you know, I am the Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the National Rehabilitation Association. We call it the other NRA. I know guns are big up here, guys. I know. All right, the other NRA. And I knew Roger Barton from my association with NRA. And he was a wonderful individual. He was, you know, one of the good guys. He was an advocate for all individuals with disabilities. And he's one of your own. He's a Pennsylvania son. And he's one of you. And he'll always be one of you. Just because you can't see him doesn't mean he isn't there. There somewhere. And he is. I would like to read, or Ed, I would like for you to, no, please read this one. Please.
Roger Barton began his life work as a rehabilitation counselor in the Harrisburg district of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. During this time, he was known for his development of strong community partnerships. He was a tireless counselor and advocate for his customers. Roger was promoted to a vocational rehabilitation supervisor serving in the Harrisburg district office. He then moved to central office where he was a facility specialist. He was then promoted to assistant director of program operation for the 15 district offices. Roger served the Commonwealth for 37.5 years, retiring as director of program operations in 2007. Throughout the span of his successful career in vocational rehabilitation, Roger never lost sight of the critical nature of the work of a rehabilitation counselor. He was an administrator that worked to support the district offices by empowering the field staff to embrace the mission of the agency through communication and mutual respect. As a leader, Roger shined. This was the pinnacle of his career. He was awarded the 2007 Pennsylvania Rehabilitation Association Charles B. Eby Administrators Award in recognition of his exemplary leadership and devotion to individuals with disabilities. He served in a leadership capacity for the PRA and was elected president in 2011. He was a great friend to the University of Scranton Rehabilitation Counseling Program. Roger Barton spent his college years at Penn State University, graduating in 1969, with, I just learned today, before lunch from his wife, with a very good friend and a former partner of mine, and they still go to football games together. It is no surprise that Roger was an avid Penn State fan. Roger was the beloved husband of Georgia, proud father of Emily and Scott, and inspiring grandfather to his 2 children. He lived his life with passion and purpose. Sadly and without warning, Roger passed from this world to the next on March 22nd, 2011 at the age of 63. Today we are proudly honoring him posthumously with the Edward R. Leahy Jr. Award for Excellence in Vocational Rehabilitation Leadership. Georgia, please.
Thank you.
And the plaque reads, the Edward R. Leahy Jr. Award for Excellence in Vocational Rehabilitation Leadership awarded to Roger Barton, October 5, 2011.
Over here now, okay.
I just want to say a few words, certainly to the Leahys. I can't thank you enough for this honor to this organization. I couldn't have written about Roger better than that. Actually, I tried, and everything I had written was in the program, so somebody did a good job of reading my mind. I followed Raj on that 40-year journey through rehab, from the counselor, meeting him at the state garage and waiting for him with the state car when he was a counselor, the whole way up to his election as president of the PRA. And as the program states, he never lost his advocacy, and he was a champion for folks with disabilities and for the folks in the field. So thank you, I appreciate this. Thanks. To our award winners, Lene, Kathleen, and the Barton family, thank you, and it is truly an honor to recognize you today. One more award, it's a gift, and we've been doing it for 10 years, and they always cringe because what do you ever do for the Leahys when they do so much every day with just a smile, with an email with a phone call from Ed saying, "What's happening now? You didn't keep me informed. I'm on the other side of the pond." Correct?
I'm not that bad.
No, he's not that bad. He'll just say, "Oh, call me later." We have a very special gift, and I have to give kudos again to Dr. Lori Brook and Dr. Rebecca Doggin, because this gift commemorates, and I have to tell you, last year I thought it was going to be very hard to top. I thought there is no way that we can ever make Edward and Patricia Leahy smile like we did last year, because I loved that training. This year, though, it's a painting of the 10th Annual Conference on Disability. This gift was commissioned from Vertu, an art studio featuring artists with disabilities. Let's have a drum roll, please. Ed and Patricia, thank you very much. Come on up and wait till you see this creation. You won't believe it.
Oh, wasn't that beautiful?
Look close. Put your glasses on.
All right.
All 10-year programs, dates, and Josie's original poem from the very first program. And if you are not familiar with this art studio, it celebrates vocational rehab at its best.
Thank you so much. How beautiful. How beautiful.
Here. Let's- Lori, sit there.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay.
Excuse me.
He does the same thing to me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Would you like to see?
Ed is going to say a
Certainly.
few words.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Being a former lawyer, I don't like surprises, of course. I'm like a Holiday Inn, no surprises. But I mean, this conference has been a complete treat for me. Joe Grady said earlier that I'm a man of few words, and mostly that's true, but I figure that this is my shot. So since I have an open mic, I might as well go for it. Just want to point out one speaker who I really wasn't prepared for, and that's David Dino Tardis, who is a former world-class and world champion weightlifter, something that I do about 4 days a week at least. Needless to say, I think I'm in a different class than David is. Tell you a story, and it relates to you. It's a true story. So I was in first or second grade, and I had nuns in first and second grade. I had the Gray Nuns of the Sacred Heart. And one day, one of the nuns posed the question to the class. We were 6, what do we know? Who are the saints? Who are the saints? And this was before the New Orleans Saints. And I remember this very kind of, I have one of those memories. I remember weird things. One boy raised his hand and said, well, those were people who were good. That wasn't going to make it for a Gray Nun of the Sacred Heart. She said, anyone else? And another person raised her hand and said, sure, they're the ones who never sinned. So the boys start looking at each other and say, okay, we're out of that one already. At age 6, we're out. And then she said, anyone else? And one little girl who, at age 6, I was smart enough to recognize she was the smartest kid in the class. She raised her hand and she said, they're the ones the light shines through. And the nun said, pardon me? She said, you know, they're the ones the light shines through in the church. She was talking about the stained glass windows, where the lights came in through the church. But you know what? 60-odd years later, she was right. The saints are the ones that the light shines through. And you're all in that group, every single one of you. Now, I have no disabilities, other than the fact that I can't see and I have a weak left side. So I was a student here, and I was in ROTC for 4 years. And I was going to get commissioned in June of 1968. And before you get commissioned, a week before, you have your pre-commissioning physical. And I was convinced that I didn't have a snowball's chance of getting commissioned, because my vision is worse than 20/400. I have a congenitally weak left side. I'm allergic to everything in the world. So I go into this Army major for my final physical, and he says, "Do you have your medicals?" I said, "Yes." I said, "It's that stack right about there." He said, "Do you have any allergies?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I think it's those last 7 pages in that stack." He thumbs through it. He said, "Are you allergic to penicillin?" I said, "No, sir." Jots something down, throws the papers back in my general direction. I catch them, and he said, "Lieutenant, you'll be commissioned tomorrow morning at the 8 a.m. ceremony." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I'm not sure whether I was proud or dejected or both, but as I was walking out of his office, because this was June of '68, as I was walking out of his office, he got up from behind his desk, and I think it's the first time he ever really looked at me during that 30-second encounter. Got up from behind his desk. As I walked to the door, he put his arm around me and said, "But son, never lose those glasses." He said, "We got enough guys shooting at our guys." He said, "I want you doing it too." So do I have time for a story? Yeah. Do I have time for a story? So one day, this has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about now, which is 90% of what I do in life. No, it's true. I kind of freely associate. I like James Joyce. So one day, Jesus is walking through Jerusalem. And this is the true story. I can document this. He's walking through Jerusalem, and he's looking down at his cloak and his mantle, and he says, "God, these things are muddy, they're ragged, they're tattered." And all of a sudden, he looks up and sees a sign that says, "M. Finkelstein, clothes made to measure." So he goes in and says, "Can you do something for me?" And Finkelstein says, "Of course I can." He said, "I'll fix you up." And he puts him in this beautiful white robe, magnificent, form-fitting. Gives him a blue mantle for over his arm. And he said, "How's that?" Jesus says, "I love it." He said, "How much?" He said, "Look, he said, you're the guy going around preaching, right?" He said, "Yeah, that's me." He said, "No charge." He said, "But if you're preaching and someone asks you where you got your clothes, just tell them M. Finkelstein, Jerusalem." He said, "Okay, it's a deal." So now it's about 3 weeks later, and he's at the wedding feast at Cana. Glad Father McElhenney's not here anymore. He changes water into wine. 5,000 guests at this wedding. And one guy yells out, "Hey, great cloak!" And Jesus says, "Oh, M. Finkelstein, Jerusalem." A month later, Sermon on the Mount. 50,000 people, multiplies loaves, fishes, 13 baskets left over. And he ends the Sermon on the Mount by saying, "And by the way, if you like my clothes, M. Finkelstein, Jerusalem." So now it's about a month later. Jesus is wending his way back through Jerusalem, and he sees a mob, a line, 15,000 people, single file to be sure, waiting to get in to see M. Finkelstein. Finkelstein spots him and says, "Jesus, you are the best marketer in history." He said, "We need a partnership." Jesus said, "Well, that's not a bad idea." He said, I think you're right." He said, "Jesus and Finkelstein it is." Finkelstein says, "Well, now, wait a minute." He said, "You're the marketing guy, but I'm the craftsman." He said, "I was thinking more like Finkelstein and Jesus." Jesus said, "Well, that one's not going to work." But they know they have a good idea. They have a concept. So they argue, they debate, they cajole, and they compromise and come up with the perfect name. Lord and Taylor.
Where's the hook? Where's the hook?
I got some more, folks. No. But folks, it's great to be back here in Scranton, really. And thank you. And as I said, apropos absolutely of nothing, but it's great to have you all here, and thank you so much for everything you do.
Oh, you never know with Ed Leahy. I cannot begin to tell you, right, Patricia?
Joe Grady, next time you say my husband is a person of few words, could you talk to me first?
A round of applause again for Ed and Patricia. Oh my goodness. So now I have the pleasure to invite Selena Waters to come to the stage to present the Door Prize. The Door Prize is a piece of artwork created by Selena, one of the artists from your creation, from the studio, the Vera Virtue Art Studio. Selena is a graduate of Abington Heights High School and a resident of Clarks Summit, Pennsylvania. And I don't know about you, but I just bought 5 beautiful cards at lunchtime, Ray. 5. Selena, would you please come up? And we have been enjoying Selena in the art studio at our conference for the last 2 years. So Selena, you get to choose the ticket.
Okay.
Oh, under the box. All right, I'll shake it. Ready? Dun, da, 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 da. Another drum roll, please. Okay.
Got it.
We have it. Would you like to read it right in, or you want me to help you?
So,
Ready?
607724.
724. 607-724, and we have a lucky winner. Thank you, Selena. And could we have your name, sir?
Bob Ames,
Bob Ames, and where are you from?
Allied Services.
Allied Services, Bob Ames. I would like to introduce you to Selena.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, you
Yeah,
wanted to
let's-
picture
See
right over.
Selena's face.
Yeah,
Sure.
Would you like to stand right over here? A little
Absolutely.
bit over, a little bit closer. And Selena, we want you in the picture as well. Perfect. That's wonderful.
Selena, take a hold of it.
That's perfect.
Sure, she's looking at you more than me. Thank you.
And thanks to my mother.
Oh, to her mother. Let's hear it. Oh.
Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness. Is this a family or what? You know, again, I think about all of our sponsors, Andrew Brown, Yoder Insurance, the News Story, and we have Vera Vertu Art Studio and Selena's mom. Please come back next year. Now, we ask that you take a 3-minute break and meet us in the Moskowitz Theater across the hall for our next presentations, which will start promptly at 1:30 p.m. And remember the CEU credits. Get those signatures.